Hello, and welcome back to The Equalist. Last week, we investigated the March 18th C-SPAN coronavirus response from President Trump. From changing his tone about the COVID-19 pandemic, even trying to change the focus off and mismanaging it, and missing the chance to contain it while the outbreak started back in January, he now switched the narrative to calling it the China virus and even condoned the phrase Kung Flu, knowing Asian Americans are at risk of hate crimes due to the labeling. He even agreed to the conspiracies that Senator Tom Cotton said about the virus being bioengineered from China when American professors had said it was false. President Trump even tried to say he always knew COVID 19 was a serious risk and did everything to contain it. President Trump answered difficult questions such as this.
Some people did note that your tone seemed more somber yesterday. You talked about that August timeline. Did you see a projection? Some people thought perhaps that 2 million potentially that could die maybe prompted part of that. Was there a shift in tone?
I didn't think, I have seen that where people actually liked it, but I didn't feel different. I've always known this is a pandemic. I felt it was a pandemic long before it was called a pandemic. All you had to do is look at other countries. I think now it's in almost 120 countries all over the world.
This coming from a man that harbored these original views.
On the coronavirus outbreak in China, my administration will take all necessary steps to safeguard our citizens from this threat. Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat. Because of all we've done, the risk to the American people remains very low. People die from the flu, and this is very unusual. And it is a little bit different, but in some ways it's easier, and in some ways it's a little bit tougher. But we have it so well under control. View this the same as the flu. When somebody sneezes, I try and bail out as much as possible. It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear. Now the Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. And this is their new hoax. If you're healthy, you will probably go through a process and you'll be fine. You take a solid flu vaccine, you don't think that would have an impact or much of an impact on corona?
No. He's asking the question, when is it going to be deployable? And that is going to be at the earliest a year to a year and a half, no matter how fast you go.
You think that's right?
And as you said, treatment's going to be available before the vaccine.
Well, I think treatment in many ways might be more exciting.
Report today the global death rate at 3.4% and a report that the Olympics could be delayed. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think the 3.4% is really a false number. Now, this is just my hunch. But based on a lot of conversations with a lot of people that do this, because a lot of people will have this and it's very mild. They'll get better very rapidly. They don't even see a doctor. They don't even call a doctor. So if, we have thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that get better just by, sitting around and even going to work, some of them go to work, but they get better. And then when you do have a death, like you've had in the state of Washington, like you had one in California, I believe you had one in New York, all of a sudden it seems like 3 or 4%, which is a very high number, as opposed to a fraction of 1%.
Also, we investigated Tom Cotton spreading the bioengineered virus conspiracy. We even saw a Fox News anchor who makes $10 million a year that can't get a fact straight about where the MERS virus
originated.
Jeez. I do this for free, but at least I could back up my statements. Enough critiquing incompetent Fox News anchors, rumor-spreading senators, and clueless presidents. Let's analyze the history of President Trump's White House COVID-19 task force, shall we? Backtracking some. The World Health Organization declares COVID-19 strain a pandemic as United States cases top 1,000 back on March 11th. Last week, we listened to President Trump speaking about a $2.5 billion bill. Let's disseminate this bill. Researching the bill, I found out Pelosi would not approve the proposal, and for good reason. Originally, Trump proposed cutting $37 million from the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, a program that helps struggling families with heating in the frigid regions of America. He then wanted to cut $535 million of funding from Ebola virus treatment and containment while the Congo was still fighting the epidemic. Lastly, he proposed cutting $678 million to other HHS programs, substance abuse treatments, programs for the elderly, and even the National Cancer Institute. The House proposed a different bill for $8.3 billion. Finally, bipartisan voting happened, and the bill was passed. This bill includes $4.5 billion for the Department of Health and Human Services to try to contain the outbreak in the United States, $1 billion to develop and manufacture a vaccine, $1 billion to help other countries battle the coronavirus, and $2 billion to reimburse states for costs incurred in tackling the outbreak that the Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention says is expected. The task force began January 29, 2020. Here's a brief list of the task force members. It was originally headed by Alex Azar. Alex M. Azar II became Secretary of Health and Human Services back in January 2018. Vice President Mike Pence took over and became Chief Coordinator. Dr. Deborah L. Birx holds the rank of Ambassador as the State Department's Global AIDS Director. Dr. Anthony S. Fauci heads the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at the National Institutes of Health since 1984. Fauci also heads research of disease outbreaks and the search for cures since the emergence of HIV/AIDS, as he is doing now with the coronavirus. Digging into Vice President Mike Pence's credentials, I found some disturbing history. As the former Indiana governor, he voted to cut funding for Planned Parenthood. 2 years after his vote, a Planned Parenthood clinic that had been the only HIV testing center in Scott County, Indiana, closed after public health spending cuts. He then threatened to veto a needle exchange, not believing that distributing clean needles was a good idea, saying, "I don't believe effective anti-drug policies involve handing out drug paraphernalia." Due to his lack of trust of science and medicine, the biggest outbreak of HIV occurred in his state as governor. 2 months passed from the start of the outbreak in 2015 before Pence declared a state of emergency. During his 2-month hiatus of neglecting his responsibilities, he turned to prayer and did nothing. Travel bans. President Trump's major topic in proving he did all he could do to prevent the pandemic from spreading into the United States. Here's a list of what he passed. January 31st, Trump restricts travel from China. February 29th, Trump restricts travel from Iran, Italy, and South Korea to include foreign nationals. Trump now proposes a 30-day travel ban for Europe that became effective Friday, March 13th. The European travel ban really isn't a ban, though. It just banned foreign nationals from entering the United States. Americans were still allowed to travel back and forth. Statistics show that when the United States was in the early triple digits of confirmed cases, over 20 confirmed cases were from Americans that returned from Italy after Italy had over a few thousand confirmed cases and a few dozen deaths. There was a lot of confusion from our leadership due to the clashes with the president spreading misinformation and lies about the procedures of detecting and containing the virus. On March 6th, Trump claims anyone can get a COVID-19 test if they want. Trump even claimed attitude of the testing is amazing and that the CDC tests were perfect. After President Trump lied about the test, Mike Pence said this statement: "We don't have enough tests today to meet what we anticipate will be the demand going forward." The reality is, Trump had the opportunity to receive accurate tests that were approved and distributed by the World Health Organization, but Trump insisted that the CDC develop them. This resulted in the CDC manufacturing faulty test kits. By the end of March 8th, less than 2,000 Americans have been tested. China tests up to 10,000 people a day at that time. As of March 8th, the CDC had only conducted around 1,700 tests compared to nearly 200,000 in South Korea. Fun fact, South Korea and the United States both had their first confirmed case on January 20th. Some more disturbing evidence came out that President Trump has been slashing government funding of public health and the CDC since 2018. He shut down the entire Global Health Security Unit of the National Security Council. President Trump eliminated the U.S. government's $30 million complex crisis fund. He reduced national health spending by $15 billion, and Trump consistently attacked Mark Green, the director of the U.S. Agency for International Development, Homeland Security Advisor Tom Bossert, Dr. Lucinio Barrio, the National Security Council Director for Medical and Biodefense Preparedness, and Tim Ziemer, the NSC's Senior Director for Global Health Security and Biodefense, either left or were fired since 2018. President Trump even tried to blame the Obama administration for not being able to make tests fast enough. As I researched this claim, I found out that President Trump was likely referring to the draft guidance issued in 2014 that extended the Food and Drug Administration's authority to regulate laboratory-developed tests, but that was never finalized or enforceable. Again, President Trump lies and tries to blame others for his incompetence. Yeah, finally, state of emergency! On March 13th, President Trump issued a national state of emergency. This move enacted over 100 laws to include provisions of the Public Health Service Act, Stafford Act, and Social Security Act. The Stanford Act responds to major disasters and emergencies, freeing up $40 billion used to purchase medical supplies and equipment. It also frees up any federal agency to use its personnel, facilities, and equipment to support local and state emergencies, distribute public health and safety information, and distribute supplies such as food and medications. The Social Security Act aims to get medical supplies, doctors, and hospital personnel to where they are needed to be during a crisis. This lifts the requirements in Medicare, Medicaid, and the Children's Health Insurance programs. This waives all types of payment limitations, prompting telehealth such as online chats with doctors from out of state. After the circus that we've adopted from our administration, the toll of the COVID-19 illness is as follows in America as of March 25, 2020 at 1900. 65,527 confirmed cases and 928 deaths, with only 393 that have recovered so far. The death rate in America stands at 1.4%, making deaths more than doubled when it comes to Americans who have recovered. I then decided to analyze what the public has to say about Trump's performance during the outbreak. I researched from 3 different sources, one being Fox News, that being right-wing, one being MSNBC, which is left, and NPR, which is mainly moderate. I took polls from all 3 sources and got the average of all parties. The results are as follows. Average approval ratings from overall Americans is 38.3%, Democrats 9.7%, Republicans 78.3%, and Independents 37%. The average disapproval ratings are as follows. Overall, 61.7%, Democrats 90.3%, Republicans 21.7%, and Independents 63%. This is what the president has to say about these polls.
President, your credibility ratings are very low. There was a recent NPR poll.
Who are you asking that question?
I'm asking
Because I see that they're very high. You know, if you look, I'm 95% of the Republican Party. We just had a poll that was done by a very reputable group where I'm beating Sleepy Joe Biden by a lot in Florida, in the state of Florida, and in other states. So I don't really know who you're talking about. All right, Jennifer, go ahead, please.
And my conclusion is this. President Trump is incompetent and blames others for his shortcomings. It will take me over 10 minutes to say what I want to say, so I'm just going to keep it short and simple. Trump should have never put a man that caused an HIV outbreak in his own state as the governor of Indiana as the head of the task force. From lying and cutting funds for public health care in the CDC to taking the serious threat of millions of Americans dying as a hoax. I will have to give Trump's performance a D-. Only reason why I did not give him a failing evaluation was because he said the truth by admitting we will lose people. He downplayed the pandemic and lied about taking the most aggressive stand in travel bans when he left all of Europe open for travel, even when that region had confirmed cases by the thousands and deaths by the dozens. He even encouraged going to work sick and gathering in the rallies just before he issued the national state of emergency. We need a leader, sir, not some pathological liar that can't take responsibility as a sitting president.
Turkish March, Road to Boston, The
All
Harriet.
right, episode 3, The Great Compromise. Many people are upset and confused about how it works and why we have the Electoral College. I will be explaining it next week here on the next episode of The Equalist. If you like that video, hit the like button and subscribe.